And the Senate set to vote today on a resolution to block further military action against Iran without congressional approval, as Karen just mentioned. Meanwhile, the House is expected to vote tomorrow on its own resolution, as Karen described. This one would call on President Trump to stop action until Congress formally declares war. Democratic Congressman Brad Schneider of Illinois is here for more on both of those. Congressman, thank you for coming on. The U.S. is already attacking Iran, and President Trump could veto these bills if they do pass Congress. So why hold these votes now?
I think it's important for our country, for the American people to know that Constitution gives only Congress the authority to declare war, to take our nation to war. And the President, as Commander-in-Chief, has the authority to stop an imminent threat, but nothing that this administration has presented, and we had a classified briefing, I have not seen the case of what was the imminence. There's not a debate about the threats Iran poses, the need to end Iran's nuclear program, to address their ballistic missile threat, to thwart their support of terrorism. They're the world's largest sponsor of terrorism. But to take the nation to war, to take our soldiers, our sailors, our Marines, and put them in harm's way, the nation has to have that debate. And that's what we're calling for. Congress has to be able to exercise its voice. In the meantime, we also are praying for the success and the safe return for every one of our troops.
Are you at all concerned that these resolutions could constrain the U.S. military from protecting Americans?
They don't. They absolutely give the administration and the military the authority and the power to take defensive actions, to protect against threats. But it is the fact that the president does not have the authority to take the country to war. Only Congress does, and we need to have hearings in our committees. We need to have debate on the floor of the House. The American people's voice needs to be heard, and then we can make what's the proper decision to address the threats we face.
Yesterday, I spoke with Senator Ted Cruz, and I asked him about Secretary Rubio saying Israel was going to strike Iran with or without the U.S. I want to play you some of that exchange. Democratic Senator Mark Warner says there was no imminent threat to the U.S. There was a threat to Israel, and if we equate a threat to Israel to an imminent threat to the U.S., we're in uncharted territory. What's your response to that?
I think it is unfortunate that Democrats, in the face of any conflict, immediately side with the enemies of America. President Trump, as Commander-in-Chief, made the right decision to take out a threat, and to do so at a time when the regime was teetering. It was more vulnerable than it has ever been. The consequences are a dramatic improvement for the people of Iran, but also a dramatic improvement for the safety and national security of Americans here at home.
What's your response to that?
Well, look, we all are, as I said, we all are praying for the safety and success of our troops. We all want to make sure that we're defending our nation against threats to our interests around the world and in the homeland. But we need to have the discussion and conversation. The administration has been giving a whole host of different reasons for starting this war at this point, and has not been clear on what are the objectives or the strategy for achieving those objectives. We don't need just to slow down Iran's march to a nuclear weapon. We need to block it permanently and be sure that they never can have a nuclear weapon. We need to secure Iran has supposedly enough fissile material, highly enriched uranium, to produce a number of nuclear bombs. We need to make sure that's secured. What is the strategy to achieve our goals, not just in the immediate term, but the long term? Because the outcome, we can't, and the president said this the other day, it will not be a success if 5 years from now there's just a new regime in Iran who's doing the exact same things this regime is doing, oppressing its people, threatening its allies, and threatening the United States. We need to make sure that Iran is completely blocked forever from having a nuclear weapon, and that whatever replaces this regime is one that brings Iran into the family of nations, helps us establish within the Middle East and around the world a more secure, stable government in Iran, and not a threat to our allies or the U.S.
Secretary Hegseth already said this morning the results of this operation so far have been incredible and historic. The goals he described are exactly what you just said. So could Democrats' criticism of this decision backfire if this mission is a success?
Look, we want to make sure Iran is no longer a threat to the United States, to its neighbors in the Gulf, to Israel, or anybody else. That is something that we all share. we want to make sure that there's a plan in place, not just for the short term, but the intermediate and the long term. This administration has been giving explanations and justifications all over the board. They're blaming others or not taking responsibility themselves. We need clear answers. Congress needs to have its voice heard, and we're the ones who have the authority to take the nation to war, to decide when the nation goes to the war. Congress needs to hear from the administration the facts in a clear and, in many cases, classified, but also in many cases a very public way, so the American people are prepared to stand by our nation.
Yesterday, I also spoke to one of the many Americans stranded in the Middle East. He was flying home from a wedding in India and ended up stuck in Qatar. How are you and other lawmakers working to help evacuate Americans trying to get out of the region?
Yeah, I heard from constituents as early as Saturday saying they were stranded in the region and what's going on. Again, this is one of those cases where we've heard mixed signals coming from the Secretary of State and the Department of State. We have told everybody, and I'll tell them right now, if you are in the region, if you're seeing this, register with the STEP program online. Make sure that the embassy and the local the American consulate offices in the regions know where you are so they can communicate with you. But the Secretary needs to put together a program to help all those who are stranded, who are caught in this war without notice, to help bring them to safety and bring them home.
You're on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. What do you want to hear from the Secretary of State and other administration officials about their decision-making on Iran?
I want to understand what was the imminent threat that brought us to this point right now. But just as important, in fact, more importantly, I want to know what the strategy is to achieve our goals. What are our goals? How will we make sure that we can achieve a deterrent effect to end Iran's nuclear program, to end their support of terrorism in the region, not just in the Middle East, but they support terrorist activity even in the Western Hemisphere? And how do we set a course that will bring more stability and ultimately peace to our allies in the Gulf?
All right, Democratic Congressman Brad Schneider of Illinois, thank you.
Thank you.